The speed of this build, of this deck, has potential to snowball at such a rapid pace and then be in a position where your firepower just is overwhelming and they don't have any way to deal with it. What's going on, Axie fam? Elijah here, back with another video. I've got one I'm extremely excited about today. Joining me is fellow Meditate member Ryan. Thanks for being on the channel again.
Oh, my pleasure, man. It's always an honor to be here.
For those who don't know, Ryan is one of the best content creators in Axie Infinity. He's actually my favorite one to watch because he does such in-depth research around the game and also what's coming in the future for Axie, including Origin. He's got tons of videos breaking down V3 mechanics, card strategy, and we're going to bring some of that flavor into our video today and discuss what looks to be a really strong composition in theory, and we're going to break down why and what it means to build a successful team in theory in V3. And why don't you start us off, Ryan, by perhaps explaining some of the key differences between Origin V2 and V3 and what you're looking for when you're trying to synergize this whole thing and make a good composition.
Exactly. Okay, yeah, so it's not a very easy thing to consider when you're going for a full Axie comp in a game you've never played before. There are going to be some very key differences between Battles V2 and Battles V3. One of the biggest one being that we now have access to the cards in both eyes and ears. Aside from that, we are no longer having 2 copies of each card. We will only have 1 copy of each card. So for a 3 Axie team, you're going to have 18 cards in total. Those are 2 of the biggest factors to consider when you're making a comp. I've been theorizing on different comps with community members, and I've come to realize that nobody has a real clear picture on what makes a good comp. So I decided to come up with a few ideas, a few considerations, almost as a framework of things to think about when you're trying to think of a comp. So the first thing I came up with was, so what is your win condition? What is the aspect of this team that is going to get you the victory? And then next off, what is going to increase the chances of that win condition? There might be cards in your team that seem good on their own, but are they really helping to facilitate that final goal? Are they helping you to achieve that win condition? And then finally, the last thing to think about is, what are the obvious counters to your win condition? Like, if you're going for a very aggressive build, then your counters are going to be very sustainable Axies that are able to heal themselves up and not get bogged down by somebody who's just throwing out a lot of damage. So we can actually walk through these questions together. For example, what is your win condition? Let's use the Triple Nut Axie as our example here. Triple Nutcracker, it isn't a huge damage card right off the bat. Initially, it's only dealing 60 damage. But every time you play a Nutcracker card, it's gaining 6 damage. So the next one will deal 66, and the one after that will deal 72. By the time you cycle through your deck the second time, you've played Nutcrackers around 6 times in total. You should be dealing upwards of 100 damage per Nutcracker card.
Yeah, that's big damage.
Just for comparison, if you do the math on most of the other big damage cards, you do have some outstanding examples like Post-Fight doing 100 damage, but you're also damaging yourself 30. You have something like Sirius dealing 90 damage for a single energy, but you have to discard a card. On average, you're looking at around 75 to 90 damage for a single energy. So for Nutcrackers to get upwards of 100 is pretty devastating.
And if your game goes long for some reason and it's like a marathon game, you could be looking at 100 plus damage.
Exactly.
I think there's probably going to be scenarios where you're seeing like 120 plus damage being done with Nutcracker cards, which is going to be nuts. Actually nuts.
Definitely. So then we have our next question, right? What increases the chances of your win condition? So if your win condition is increasing the damage of those Nutcracker cards, then to increase the chances of that win conditioning happening, then you want to play those Nutcracker cards as much and as fast as possible. So what you can do to increase those chances is by adding a lot of draw power. By adding draw power, you're cycling through your deck faster and getting to those nuts as soon as you need them.
And real quick, for the, we can take a look at these 3 cards. You can see that some are retaining that spirit, as Axie has said, to their original form. So Hero used to draw a card when hitting Aquas and Birds. Now it just always draws a card, which is really amazing. Yeah, and then Pink Cheek allows you to discard 2 cards and then draw 2 extra. So there you get to be strategic and letting go of things that maybe aren't as important towards your win condition. So cards on your other Axies to guarantee that you're cycling through faster to get the Nutcracker cards. Nemo is, wow, 1 card and 1 energy. That seems like arguably still kind of broken. People thought Nemo was always really good in Axie for being an Aqua part, and it looks insanely good in V3 as well.
Exactly. No, you're totally right. Nemo is definitely overpowered. Not only is it giving you that extra card, but you're gaining extra energy, so you'll be able to put out way more damage output than you typically would. Now, there's actually a little more utility in these cards that we didn't talk about yet, and that is the fact that both Pink Cheek and Nemo both have Banish. So not only are these cards allowing you to cycle through your deck faster, but when they are banished, it actually decreases the size of your deck, which means you're not going to have to spend nearly as much time drawing cards to find the nutcrackers.
So right now, if we're speculating that there's 18 cards in a deck, because every Axie has 6 parts and they have 1 of each, essentially, if you play 2 banish cards next time, and once the deck cycles, it goes down to 16 cards. Am I right?
Exactly.
So you could get your deck thinner and thinner, essentially, by incorporating banish in a strategic way.
100%. All right. Now, finally, what are the counters to your win condition? In this situation, your win condition is the Nutcracker Axie. So you want to protect him as much as possible. If your opponent is coming in with a backdoor Axie, trying to take out that Axie in the early game, you could be screwed for the rest of the match. So to protect ourselves from those backdoor threats, we want to play plenty of taunt cards. Probably one on the front lane and maybe even one on the mid lane as well.
I love this, Ryan. You're killing it, bro. Like, win Meditate Pro. When are you going to be V3 Meditate Pro, man?
Just wait.
You're killing the theory.
Wait for Origin to drop, man. I'm going to be at the top of that leaderboard. Don't you worry.
Bro. Let's go.
All right. So now we have a pretty good idea of what cards to incorporate in our comp, right? We want draw power. Of course, we want the triple nut, and we want some taunt in there as well. So now we can start actually building our comp. So let's start off with the Nutcracker Axie. So we obviously want him on the back lane so he can survive the longest. He's got the triple Nutcracker. We've got the hero on there, of course, for purity and for the card draw. And I actually opted for Antenna on the horns. Now, a lot of people have been speculating that Antenna is just not the greatest card because, compared to Nemo, where you're gaining an energy and also gaining a card for 0 energy, on the contrary, Antenna costs a single energy. You're not drawing anything. You do gain the ability to scry. Scry is an ability from Magic the Gathering. It allows you to look at the top 4 cards of your deck in this situation, and then you can choose to discard any number of those cards and then place the rest back on top of your deck. So what you can do in this situation is actually discard any card that's not a Nutcracker, so that you can guarantee you're drawing into the right cards next turn. And again, it's also a banish card, so once you use it for the first time, it's not going to get cycled back into your deck.
Right, and so this just makes that process extremely fast. You're basically discarding 3 cards you don't want to make the speed of getting the Nutcracker cards faster, right?
Definitely. And once you get into that 1v1 situation, it's already been banished and you don't even need to worry about drawing into it.
Right. I love that.
In my last video, I talked about a lot of amazing Axies that don't necessarily exist yet. There's going to be a lot of breeding that needs to take place for the meta to truly evolve. But for this specific example, I actually did choose Axies that do exist, either on the marketplace or in somebody's wallet. And for this guy, we actually have Telescope. Now, it doesn't necessarily seem like the best choice for the I card in this situation, but if we continue through the comp, you'll understand what the strategy is. And in the front lane, we have somebody who's a bit beefier. We have the taunt card, of course.
Look at this thing.
Exactly. Yeah, we have the taunt card in Ant, right? So Ant is one of the few taunt cards we have in the game, and it's the only taunt card that actually provides you shield with the ability. So as opposed to something like Eggshell, which deals damage and gives you taunt, or Cattail, which does the same thing, a little bit of damage and taunt, I feel like Ant is probably the best case scenario for a tankier build.
It looks like it. Yeah, you draw them in and you're more protected. And for those who are not super familiar, the blue in this game in V3 is shield, the red is attack. So you're getting 40 shield with Ant.
And then for a little extra shield, I chose to go with Pumpkin, because if the effect procs, when you're taunted, they're going to be targeting that Axie, and with Pumpkin, if they do get targeted, then you're drawing an extra card. So that helps you cycle through a little bit more. Now we have Kotaro on the mouth, which might not necessarily be the best mouth card, but it works very well in this situation. Kotaro deals 2 hits to random enemies, and you gain 1 energy back if it hits 2 different enemies. So the best case scenario for this card is to use it early game, while your opponent still has 3 Axies. Because as those Axies begin to diminish, your chance of getting that energy back slowly diminishes as well. Then we have Antenna as well. I don't feel like I need to explain it. It's the same situation as before. It's able to help you draw those Nutcracker cards a little bit faster.
Actually, if you have Antenna twice, you get to like speed run through your deck, right?
100%.
Because, one draws it, gets rid of 3. The other draws it, gets rid of 3. I mean, you just cycle so quickly, and you're banishing both of those plus the other banished cards we have. I mean, you really like drilled this home, Ryan.
I streamlined it as much as I possibly could. In fact, I think you have the ability to cycle through your entire deck in 2 turns if you draw the cards correctly.
Yeah, that's so crazy. So you get that first round of Nutcracker cards off immediately, or it's possible to, and then you're on your second cycle, your third cycle, and that's where we were talking about by the end game, your 1v1 beast is doing over 100 damage.
Yeah, and from what we've seen so far, it looks like most Axies only have 320 health. So if you're dealing upwards of 100 per card, you could be taking out an Axie every turn.
That's right. Let's talk about the telescope now, right?
Right. So telescope on this Axie doesn't make too much sense either. Doesn't make too much sense on the back lane. But when you consider what we're putting in the mid lane, we have an almost pure Aqua here. Of course, he's got telescope as well. We opted for Eggshell to give us a little bit more attack power if we need it. You could always go for Ant or Cattail as well, just to give you that taunt. But the idea here is we have Blue Moon for some more draw power, Nemo for the draw power and energy gain. But the idea with Telescope is that since you have Telescope on all 3 of your Axies, the mid lane, the front lane, and the back lane, what it allows you to do is turn 1, if you draw into a Telescope, you can use it to search your deck for another Telescope. Use that to search your deck for the 3rd Telescope, and then use that to search your deck for a Nemo, and then once you've played that, you've already banished 4 cards out of your deck.
So you're banishing with this build, let's just get this straight. You're banishing 4 cards, and in that scenario, you can do it almost immediately. Then I think we have, what, 3 other banished cards? We have 2 antennas, and then
we have Telescope, 3 Telescopes, 2 antennas, 1 Nemo, so 6, yeah.
Basically, once those are gone, again, we are flushed down into, theoretically, 12 cards in our deck. And a lot of those have drawing power, which means the speed of this build, of this deck, has potential to snowball at such a rapid pace and then be in a position where your firepower just is overwhelming and they don't have any way to deal with it.
That is the goal, 100%.
Dude, I want to play so bad. Like, I want to play V3 so bad to try this stuff out. Oh my god. Come on, Axie. Let's go, Sky Mavis. Release it, please.
No, we are right on the edge, man. It should be here in just a couple of days.
Yeah. Well, this build looks insane, and I really appreciate you coming onto the channel and helping to break down some of these core concepts. And I can't wait to continue to theory craft with you, Ryan, as well. And I'm so glad we have you on Meditate to help us build these things out first and get the secret sauce that we can push with an arena. What are your final thoughts here for the viewers? Things for them to consider before Origin, the soft launch, actually happens.
I would say that what I want to leave people with is just the knowledge that theory crafting at this point is only going to continue. We still don't know a lot of factors about the game. There are certain things that could totally destroy the entire concept of this comp. Like, what if we're only drawing 2 cards per Axie? By the time we get to that 1v1, our entire strategy doesn't make sense because we're only drawing 2 Nutcracker cards instead of all 3.
Yeah. So guys, don't go running out and buying everything we talk about. Just take it as knowledge and make it like, you know, something that you experiment with when you look at all the cards. Like, well, what's going to synergize? What's going to create ideas for yourself so you have things to work with when the game launches?
Yeah, definitely. This is not financial advice. We are purely speculating. We are theory crafting here. We have to remember that most of the OP Axies, most of the Axies that are just insane in this new meta, they don't exist yet. They haven't been bred. So it's going to take the entire community theory crafting like crazy to even think up these OP builds, and then even more work to breed those Axies into fruition and finally test them out.
Yeah, that's right. So a long road ahead, but one that we can agree we're all insanely stoked for. And I hope that this video helped get you guys excited for Origin. And on that note, I think we're going to wrap this one up. Ryan, thanks so much for being on the channel once again.
Thanks for having me.
And guys, make sure you go subscribe to him. His channel's Axie Faction, link in the description below. And we'll see you in the next one. Peace.